Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching yet another one of our conversations. Exactly. Clearly, a lot to discuss. Today, we're going to go more into the franchise development side of things. Thank you to anybody that's preloaded questions onto the Facebook Mastermind. I will go ahead and pop that on the screen. If you have not joined the Facebook group, if you go to Facebook and just type Franchise Growth Mastermind in your search bar, it should appear. Just request access as it is a private group. But we're building a nice community of franchise executives. Note to those who are joining the network, this is not an advertising platform. It is a conversational platform. So this is about designing questions and answers that you guys need as we roll through this. So let me get rid of that and welcome our group. Joe, I'm going to start with you. Let's start off just general thoughts. How is this affecting business? How is it affecting franchise? Just some general insights on what's running through your head right now.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so I'll just start with how's it affecting business. Markets trade on predictability. And because we don't know how this is going to end or when it's going to end, the markets can't predict. So in the face of not knowing, markets have a tendency to freeze. So the lead generation part of our business, Franchise Performance Group. So we have a digital marketing firm that does lead generation for franchisees, outsourced fran dev, advisory, and financing, and private equity are where we play, right? So private equity still has a stomach for deals because they just see it as the opportunity to get good brands at a discount now. We do see lead generation at pre-corona levels because people are home, nobody's looking over their shoulder, they're concerned about their future. Everybody expects we're going to be moving into a recession, and people are starting to take these steps to put matters in their own hands and doing the self-directed research. So lead generation for most of our clients is at least flat. Our worst client, I think, is down 20%, and then we have some clients up. So we're about where we were. Fran dev, you're seeing deal flow going down because, again, we don't have the predictability that it would generally take. People don't want to saddle themselves with debt, not knowing when they're going to open or deplete their cash, and not knowing what the future looks like. That's understandable. For Franchise Performance Group, personally, we've been virtual, for about 7-8 years now, so it's not really affecting our operations. Like anybody, we've got clients that are putting on pause because of deal flow, right? We add our value by the cash that we generate on behalf of our clients. If deal flows down, our value would go down. So that's understandable, but we're holding our own. And then me personally,
I'm on a really good.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Thanks for that, Joe. Michael, same question to you. And obviously, you have a perspective that will ring into restaurants, into development, and all that. I love the insights that you're having, at least as we navigate these first few weeks of what this means for the industry and business.
Yeah, we're in the restaurant business, so we've got a kind of a tough row to hoe. For the last few years, Teriyaki Madness has been putting together third-party delivery and our apps and all of our technology. So we've been really well prepared for something like this. As far as lead generation and that kind of activity, we're down 43% in our lead generation. But what we're seeing is the folks who are interested in Teriyaki Madness understand that the business model is going to come out the other side as really being the superior business model. So the folks that we do have come in are the ones who can see 9 months ahead. They're not emotional, oh my gosh, I hate my boss, or I lost my job and I need to go find a business. They are, wow, look at the opportunities that are going to exist with available real estate. Or, hey, contractors are suddenly more available. Labor will be more available. So we've seen a shift in not necessarily quantity, but in quality. Folks who are business savvy, perhaps they're in other brands, and they see an opportunity in the future to really be able to step on the gas and be able to expand their empires through something that is modeled for the future. It's not fine dining. It's not casual dining where people go in and they get served at the table, but it's got a lot of takeout. It's got a lot of delivery. It's got a lot of convenience. And that's really one of the things that is going to come out of this is fast casual, and those that are prepared with the technology and the business model to service customers quickly and easily are really what's going to come out the other side as being the healthiest business model really in the industry.
Hey, Michael, it's interesting with the quality, right? Lead gen down, quality up. The individuals that are now flowing through your lead gen, would they have been individuals that pre-COVID would have been in the flow, or these people are entering the market completely new based on new opportunity? And
Charles, that's a great question. I think that there's a lot of older folks that have built their national businesses on brands that are sit down, for example, or that are legacy brands where they own 30 of something that's got a big footprint. And I think the sudden realization that there's a kind of a new business model that's viable, that has some brand positioning, that has an opportunity to be able to grow, is really what the difference is. So folks were comfortable making, having the business model, understanding the economics of a larger footprint sit-down restaurant, are now looking around going, wow, I've got to find a solution going forward.
Yeah. Hey, Charles, what we're seeing too, especially food service, you see a market that traditionally was 15, 18% EBITDA flowing through to the bottom line, dropping down to 10 or 12% because you have the rising cost of labor, rising cost of proteins and commodities, rising costs of real estate. But what you haven't had is an increase in customer count, right? So margins have gotten squeezed. So what had happened is there was a lot of money on the sidelines. Waiting for some sort of market correction. Predictably, the early adopters and the heavy risk takers are going to see this as, okay, more available labor, so downward pressure on labor, downward pressure on supply lines, because suppliers are going to want to shore up their revenues too. Certainly downward pressure on real estate costs, which means better margins with the right model. So you're probably going to see a quick influx of high risk early adopter profiles coming in early. And then as the market stabilizes, I think franchising as a general rule is that you got a more risk averse clientele as a general rule, which is why they pay royalties, almost like an insurance policy, right? So I do think that there's a baked in high risk market pool that's going to really look for opportunity coming out of this and come hard and fast. Because they know whatever, in a real estate model, they know whatever money they put down right now, right? They're not going to be open for a year to 18 months anyway, right? So the last recession was 19 months, right? So they could be saying, hey, more than likely, I'm going to be out of the other side of this by the time my doors open. So the time to get in would be now.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point, and I think that's going to be the swing with anybody that has brick and mortar. The sophisticated buyers are going to say the time from now until the time that I open is way that I'm really playing for 2021 right now. So therefore, if I can catch real estate at a little bit of a dip in how much it's going to cost for me to get into it, that now on the other side of this, I can be prepared for potential growth. The sophisticated operators are starting to at least think about this. And Michael, I would assume that that's going to be some of the target that comes in, say, over the next 3 months or so.
Yeah, I've been saying for the last few years that I've never seen the restaurant industry transition as quickly as I've seen it transition before any of this happened. Casual dining has really been suffering. Their traffic counts are down. The way people eat and the way people interact has really been changing. This is really a catalyst to accelerate that. I think the folks who were in those older business models are smart enough to realize the opportunities that are going to exist. I've seen forecasts where as much as 15% of restaurants are going to shut down for good. Well, that creates an opportunity for those with a viable business model to be able to move into those retrofits for a much less of a capital investment, be able to take over A1 locations, and assuming that the capital is available to be able to expand pretty aggressively.
It's interesting because I learned all these conversations, and then what Joe started with is critical, I think, which is we don't know that end date when the go button goes on. And what we're finding, though, is with all these conversations with smart franchisors and development teams, especially Michael with Teriyaki Madness. I mean, you guys have a small footprint. You have it's just interesting to me to see, the themes or stories that come out of this. The positives are once we find out that restart button, we have maybe second generation space. We have increases to cash flow. We have labor, alleviating all of Joe's points. And then I love the story, how this all fits in with the quality of lead generation going up. So knowing that from a franchise development perspective, are there any things you guys are doing now to readjust to that story, sort of let up the accelerator on point A, but really hit it on point B?
Yeah, that's a terrific question. And I'd like to hear Joe answer that question too. I think our strategy is really just focusing on getting our ducks in order here. How do we go ahead and make sure that all of our lists are clean, that our portal messaging is all consistent? We've been rocking and rolling for a couple of years. I think we all have for a few years now. How can we go ahead and just take a breath, make sure that we're all prepared for the next, 3, 4, 5 months, or whenever things kind of reset and they get fired up again? We're taking the opportunity to just get our house in order. I don't know if it's about channels and vehicles of how we get the message out. I think right now it's about the message. It's being empathetic for people's situations, and it's really being able to promote opportunity in the future. If you can get those franchisees to, as Joe said, 6-9 months out, which is reality. If you're going to build a business, by the time you're done, you're going to be open in 9 months. Well, what's the world going to look like in 9 months? I don't think the predictability is set in stone. But I think smart people who have been around for a while know that it's going to be better than it is now. So, Joe, maybe you can answer that question too.
Yeah, I want to start higher than the question was asked, if that's okay. If you look, we're coming out of the least entrepreneurial economy in the history of the United States. In any given year, if you go back 70 years, there are generally 500,000 to 600,000 new business starts. We dipped under 400,000 last year, probably for the first time in 70 years. So why aren't people starting new businesses? Well, typically because the job market, you've got under 4% employment, which is way under 3% for college educated, right? You've got great returns, et cetera, and so on. But but I was one who always thought that there was supply-demand disequilibrium in franchising. So even if you have 400,000 new business starts, you only have about 15,000 new franchise starts, and maybe another 15,000 or so of existing franchisees expanding within their existing systems, heavily weighted towards larger systems. So about 80% of that growth is from units, 100 units or more, according to FranConnect, right? They probably have the best database in Fran data, right? So if you really look at it, you've got 3,000 franchise systems fighting for 3,000 deals. That's insane. So what this is going to do is it's going to create some more. I think franchisors need to re-examine what is it we're marketing, okay, and what is it that 300 Over 300,000 people that start businesses don't even look at franchising as a solution. We're only capturing just like under 10% of new business starts. It's like anything. If you have less than 10% of the total market, you got to look at the market and say, why aren't we giving the market what the market's buying? And nobody's asking that relative to the franchisor value proposition. If you look at, like, my brother's an actuary, he applied for one of the Chick-fil-A openings as they were starting to roll in Connecticut. They had over 1,000 applicants for one restaurant. So what's Chick-fil-A doing that they get 1,000 people throwing their hat in the ring for one restaurant, and we're trying to sell as hard as we possibly can. When we're selling and other people buying, we got to look at what's the value that we're creating, on behalf of the buyer. So I think it's a perfect time to reevaluate the whole franchisor model and create better models. So asset-light models, certainly a stair-step royalty or royalty abatement in the early on, so people could take money out in year one, because we're going to be selling against replacement income. Side hustle businesses, Uber doesn't seem to have a hard time finding drivers. And that happened virtually overnight, right? Because there's a built-in market for people looking for side hustle. And we don't really have those opportunities other than things like commercial cleaning, which, like Janny King gets, does thousands of deals a year. So asset light, real estate light, home based. Like, how do we roll people into a fixed location in some businesses? Obviously, food service, you can't do that, right? But how do we roll people into business and let them build into fixed or higher cost investment opportunities when their cash flow actually allows for that, right? So I think at the end of the day, we got to look at what times are we in, okay, and then what's the buyer predictably going to want on the way out, right? So we know right now, there was 3.2 million unemployment claims just last week, which is about 2% of the labor force. So that puts us at somewhere around the high fives, maybe 6% unemployment. If you go back to 2010, when we were kind of all doing deals and we were kind of rolling out of what they would say is the worst economy in a long time, unemployment was in the high nines. So it looks like at least the entrepreneurial marketplace will absorb probably about a 9% unemployment. Let's assume it goes to 9. I've seen numbers higher than that, but let's assume it goes to 9 or 10%. What are those people going to need? They're not going to have cash. Stock market's down 25%, right? And they may or may not have job prospects, but they're smart, they're educated, they're probably way better capitalized than they were 5 years ago, even with the 25% dip in the marketplace. How do we ease them into a business and get them kind of back to normal? And that changes the value prop, which changes the brand story, which changes the content streams. And now these are things, we probably have maybe 60 to 90 days to plan for, but we should be looking at what an opportunity to, as things are slowing, for Fran Dev to sit down and say, let's give the market predictably what the market wants. Private equity has been trying to play in franchising forever. They don't want to operate. These guys own. They don't want to operate. I haven't met a franchisor yet, okay, that will actually create a matchmaker program. Maybe, there are some models, maybe like Outback Steakhouse, where you just combine the money with the operator and just own that piece, and then support the operating partner and just let the money collect the money. Like, why are we making cash? Why are we making financing an issue? When there is enough money on the sidelines, they just don't want to operate. And there's people that want to operate that may or may not have the money. It sounds like there's a matchmaking solution in there somewhere. But I don't know a lot of franchisors that have institutionalized things like operating partnership models, and it might be time.
Joe, I think your point is right on. Why do you think Steak and Shake is having such a problem? Isn't that what they've been trying to do?
I'm not up on what they're trying to do. I know they're trying to. I saw trying to sell a lot of distressed assets. So if you're asking me what they tried to create a be a price leader at that $4 price point, which my understanding wouldn't work. It doesn't work. So I think they have a unit level economics problem. I don't think they've got an operator partnership problem.
Because I've been watching that business model, and I think they've been trying to bring in somewhat the Chick-fil-A model with a $10,000 down deposit. And once again, could be very wrong on all those numbers, but I love what you're saying. It's the only case study that I can bring up that doesn't appear to be catching any kind of traction. And it was a real question. I don't.
Yeah,
I
suspect they went to that model because their unit level economics do not appeal, to the traditional restaurateur, right? So what do they got left? They've got the distressed assets, and they're trying to put people in business to keep restaurants open, to keep their own cash flow up, is what I suspect. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, some of the things that Joe and Michael, that you guys are saying, I think this is an opportunity to reposition your message. I think the story is happening in real time. How are franchisees getting true support in this time of crisis? I believe that's going to be something that shows up on franchise lead generation websites. On the other side of this is, how did the franchisor respond? How do they make me feel confident and comfortable with the leadership that I bought into and the royalties that I've paid for the support that I'm getting? So I think the story is going to shift. I agree with Michael that it's about the message right now, and that's happening in real time on how we're acting as leaders to our organizations, both not only to our franchisees, but to both our customers and our team members. I think the places of distribution on message is going to change. Gannett has announced furloughs for the next 3 months. Each reporter is going to they're going to have a week furlough each month for the next 3 months. So the newspaper business and TV business and radio business that they own is going to be disrupted. That means there's going to have to be other places to tell the story, which it seems like website and within your four walls is going to be a part of that. But more importantly, it's going to be the human beings that are out there saying, you have to buy this brand because they totally had my back during a crisis. But here's the good. I'll call it the silver lining. I think franchising as an industry has allowed too much garbage in. There hasn't been anybody saying, let's push the pause button on bad brands. Right or wrong, the broker networks, some of them have taken on any brand possible and put it in front of people, even though that's irresponsible to put that offer in front of a franchisee that probably won't succeed. So it is time. Like, we needed something to shake this up. So the silver lining is the businesses that get to the other side of this could very well be viable franchise businesses, and will have good stories to tell, and will have franchisees that are ready to grow with them in some capacity. That could be on one unit and just making that much better. But it's like we were due for something to shake us up. And the last point, I would love your guys' feedback on this, is, I think us as human beings have taken life for granted for way too long. And we had such a good run, and every economic leader saying, hey, you for some sort of feeling in the marketplace. It's been told that this is coming, and people are like, no, it's going to be great forever. It's going to be great forever. Some people plan for a rainy day. Some people found gratitude in the value of trying to live the best life that we're trying to live. Some did not. So I feel like there is silver lining. Like, no matter what, there should be good on the other climb of this. We're still on that dip. We don't know when that dip ends, but when we get to that other side, there's going to be some bright things that happen to our industry and to us as humans. Would love your feedback on that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I could jump in, like, some people say the glass is half empty. Some people talk about the glass being half full. I say there's 4 fluid ounces and everything else is made up, right? So I'm not a glass half empty or glass half full. I want to know what the tea leaves say, what's predictable. So what do we know? The best thing we can do to predict the future is based on what's happened in the past. And there's some level of unpredictability here, but at the end of the day, we know markets come back. Right, we know we're in an entrepreneurial economy. We know there's opportunity, So, and then when you talk about the story, some people are going to hear what's the story, and they're going to hear like what's the positive spin. I'm going to invite you to think about it differently. I'm going to say, what's your value, and how do you articulate the value to the marketplace in a way that the market will grasp it, understand it? Okay, and we'll move money off the sidelines because it's real and it's demonstrable. So part of the story is going to be the cash position of the franchisor. How many franchisors, like when we're at all cocktail parties, what's the first question that somebody asks? What's hot, right? which is code word for what's new, probably undercapitalized, and is unproven, in this economy. So I think it's going to be, I think the value proposition will be what's stable, what's resilient, okay, what's the cash position of the franchisor? Has the leadership even been there before? Has the leadership navigated a brand and grown a brand through recession, right? Because we all know, post-recessionary times that the economic rent and the gains go disproportionately to the market leaders, right? So what's the brand's plan for being a market leader? And Nick, what you're saying before is that, the market's propped up a lot of weak players. Rising tide raises a lot of ships, okay? Recessionary times exposes that, right? Because they didn't do the work, right? To become a market leader, they don't have a plan or a desire maybe even to be a market leader. Now's not the time. If somebody doesn't have the stomach, a brand doesn't have the stomach, a leader doesn't have the stomach to reinvest to be the market leader, the entrepreneurs better reevaluate putting dollars into that brand. It's going to be like in food service, like what's the technology play? Like I've had food service operators pre-corona tell me, I'm not looking at a brand unless they have a labor-saving device, some labor-saving technology in the move, because they're already out of business as far as we're concerned. So people are looking for innovation. They're looking for smarter, forward-thinking leadership, and then franchising. We seem to be. We don't invent anything, right? Like as a general rule, right? We didn't invent the hamburger. My first job out of school in '85 was with Subway at 375 units. We didn't invent the sandwich, right? It was meat between two slices of bread. We just branded. So franchising, as a general rule, is the better, faster, cheaper model, right? We're replicators. We're not innovators, as a general rule. It is the time to look at your model, right, and innovate, make it resilient, and quite frankly, drive more value to the franchisee, either through risk mitigation. Typical franchisee sells their business at 3 times earnings. Franchisor at $1 million worth of EBITDA. We're working with private equity. They're putting together bids of 10, 11, 12 times earnings at $1 million worth of EBITDA. Well, why not have that? Why not create a model where the franchisee, which is adding value to the franchisor, share the uptick to mitigate the risk or increase the reward? We really, we talk about, we say things like, we're only successful when franchisees are successful. That's not really entirely the case. Because a franchisor, their margins above break even on royalty dollars might be, I've seen 50 to 75 cents flow through to the bottom line when a franchisee might be flowing through 25. So the franchisor's got a better model than the franchisee today, which is why you've got hundreds of franchisors coming into the marketplace and getting the same number of franchisees buying. So I think it's really time to look at shared risk models, share reward models, even shared equity potentially models, reducing the franchisees, front end, like we talk about Assetlight, we talk about side hustle type businesses, partnering money with operator. It's really time to look at how can we add value to the entrepreneur and go after the 400,000 people that don't look at franchising as an option for self-employment. Then I'll shut up.
Joe, I mean, Michael started off conversations focusing on technology, footprint, value, right? Yeah. And I think you're driving in a massive point also, which is, I mean, it seems like many brands were lazy. I challenge many brands to even articulate their value proposition, yet you and Michael, that's like your entire focus in the conversation. And what I love is the paradigm shift that you're focusing on. So maybe we're here right now where there's brands that aren't focused on that value-driven model, that value proposition, and say Chick-fil-A is on the other side. But it seems to me where you and Michael are leaning toward, at least, is there may be new ground in between, and that could be the innovation as we move. And I love even just the insights and your thought process when you're talking about modifying royalty structures to get some cash on, to get some ROI in those initial years and stuff. I think that's where the big opportunity is. And I think there was laziness on the other side. And I think it's not an accident why Michael, Haith, and Teriyaki Madness is seeing high quality leads, because if Michael and his team aren't doing what they did the past couple of years, there's no high quality. It's just, continuous, let's just jam up portals and jam up, just platitudes as to why they should buy.
Yeah, you kind of set me up perfectly for that, Charles. I think over the last couple of weeks, it's become abundantly clear the value that a franchisor needs to provide to the franchise system. The ability to have the expertise to install technology that independents can't afford on their own. The ability for us to really be able to parse through the regulatory morass that's coming down with all of the $2 trillion package. How can we go ahead and on a daily basis, we can communicate to our franchisees and help them with worksheets and workbooks of how to be able to secure the dollars that they're due. That's what a franchisor's job is. The answer used to be, you get the brand and we're going to show you an operations manual. It really has evolved so much further than that for good franchisors who will really step in there and say, here's the need that a franchisee has while they're working in their shop and they're surviving and they're kind of wading through this crisis. The franchisor has a team that can be looking at every single way that we can make their business model better with things that they don't have time to do. We've got the buying power, we've got the expertise, and that's our job. And any franchisor who kind of throws up their hands and say, we don't have the bandwidth to go ahead and install technology or figure out third-party delivery, or how do we deal with employees who are sick? How do you deal with that? That right there, I'm going to say it for the third time, that's our damn job. And if we're not doing it as a franchisor, shame on us. Nick brought it up kind of early as, you know what, the economy has allowed a whole lot of franchisors to kind of take a whack at it. There's some business models that just simply don't work. Hey, it's not even about financing or capitalization. It's not even about experience. It's someone decides that they're going to go ahead and, you know what? I've got this little cart. I'm going to go ahead and franchise it. They throw it out to some of these broker groups who then start showing it, and it starts getting some traction. And then you've got a whole lot of franchisees who are standing there without the expertise or the support to be successful. It seems like a million years ago, but the big news used to be this burger concept that really just sold a whole lot of burger locations, and then they disappeared. That's just an economy that's out of control. I do think, and I hate to call a silver lining to a crisis like this, but this is going to go ahead and clean some things up. It's going to allow the folks who really have good intent and they know what the hell they're doing so they can support their franchisees and those people who have invested a lot of their life savings in pursuing their dream.
Yeah, if I could dovetail what Michael's saying, you go back to value proposition. So at Franchise Performance Group, we would say every franchisor has two value propositions, right? So one is the consumer-facing model, right? So what's the customer buying? What's the value? But it's also, they have to have a value proposition as a franchisor, right? So the value proposition as a franchisor is, what's their success or track record in recruiting, training, developing, resourcing, and leading a team of entrepreneurs to build a profitable, sustainable brand. So if the franchisor leadership has never been there and they don't have the capital to do it, okay, then they're already behind the curve coming out of this economy. It's going to be tough. Now, go back to the silver linings, private equity has been pouring in to franchising. We have 2 of our clients are private equity firms and half our clients are private equity backed. And it's really interesting how the private equity, how quickly they come to conclusions. These are not dumb guys, right? So they come to the conclusion, they think they're buying a consumer-facing model, and they find the limiting factor is the franchisor model. And they're saying, wait, what is it? How does it even work? And what's missing that private equity's been driving is really franchisor intellectual property. So if you're thinking about the franchisor, what do they do for a franchisee, right? They create a body of work, they create intellectual property to create a sustainable business, consumer-facing model. But franchising is never done for the franchisor. what franchisors do for franchisees, which is codify the model. Right, and why private equity has been looking at our company, because we've just spent the last, since 2002, just codifying what we can of the franchisor model and applying that to our clients. That's why of the 120 brands we work with, 60 of them are still in the Entrepreneur 500 list, because we build sustainable growth systems, not based on force of personality, but based on intellectual property, like the franchisor model, right, that just works over time across brands, across concepts, and just to build a business model that franchisees can operate. So it's really what we're gonna. I think one of the things that's going to come out of this is a greater perfection of the franchisor model, which we would define as recruiting, training, developing, leading, and resourcing franchisees to build the brand. Because today, largely, that model doesn't exist.
Guys, we have a ton of questions, so I'm going to start putting some of these on the screen. I'll read through the question just so that you guys can hear it, because it might show up in fine print. And then whoever wants to take a swing at answering, we'll go through that. Let's see. All right, Michelle Rowan says, how are you preparing to talk to candidates about this COVID-19 business and the franchisees? Most brands have spent the last few years getting more granular with their FDD and financials, item 19s. How will this impact your process and conversations? You want to take a swing at that one?
Yeah, I'll dive into that. About 3 years ago, we made the decision to go ahead and provide actual P&Ls from shops that have been in business for 2 years or more, which is essentially when we believe the business model kind of settles down from grand openings and growth and that kind of thing. Anytime we can have an honest conversation with candidates, we jump all over that. We're not selling anything. We are outlining what our business model is. We're outlining our culture. We're outlining our rules of engagement. The candidate is going to decide if they'd like to be part of that, and we make the decision if it makes sense for them to join us. All that being said, it really comes down to honesty and setting expectations for the franchisees that are going to come into that business model and how hard it's going to be. I don't care if it's Teriyaki Madness or another brand or another business model. Opening one's own business is really hard. And we find every opportunity to have that conversation. And guess what? Our closing rates soar when we just simply call a spade, and we're honest with people about how hard it's going to be, our role and their role, and the expectations that each party should have for each other.
Love that. Joe, anything you want to add on that?
I think Michelle asked the right question, right? We're in an unprecedented time period, so I think what we have our recruiters doing, because we have quite a bit of deal flow in the pipe, and some of those deals are stagnating. It's just like, what's it going to take, right? So what do you want to do? Right, and then work with the franchisee to craft and the franchisor to craft the solution. Some people are saying, "Hey, I want to wait a year, but I want to know the territories there." Great. Well, that's we're going to try to craft an opening where I want to start out part time. Great. Let's just craft something that works. I don't think this is a time period to walk away from deals as it is to listen to the market, all right, and give the market what the market wants over the next 1 or 2 years, instead of trying to force them into a solution they don't want or don't want to buy, or they don't even see as a solution, which might be the traditional franchise model. So it's a time to listen and learn.
Jenna says, how to market and when. I've seen a lot of posts about people not wanting to be solicited during this time, which I get, since they top of mind to those that may be ready to buy following this pandemic. Thoughts?
Well, I'll grab that one. I own a digital agency, so I'll tell you, here's the risk, right? Lead interest is high and lead count is flat for most brands, or a lot of the brands that we're working with. So there's high demand for information right now. So the typical person buys a business over 120 days or so, and then if you've got if you're bricks and mortar, you're probably looking at another 9 to 18 months to get open, right? So if you pull your ads now, you're probably looking at 120 days to fill up your pipe, another 120 days or so for more deals to come out. You lost 9 or 10 months, right, by freezing. So you have to look at, is that the best thing, which is going to be, that's losing all of 2020 and maybe Q1 of 2021 if you freeze. So that's just I think just a question every brand's going to have to ask for themselves, right? Do you turn off the spigot, or do you dial it back but keep a presence in the marketplace and keep water coming out of the hose? Because once you turn that spigot off, it takes a while to go from a dead stop to a vibrant pipeline, right? So my recommendation, as best you can, keep the water trickling. So when it does come back, you've already got positive momentum, right? You already have your SEO positions. You already have pay-per-click and other types of digital marketing programs that you already know work. And then it's just stepping on the gas as opposed to trying to recreate from a dead stop. That's really hard.
One point on this though too, like everyone's so sensitive about the communication now, but I think if going back to what you gentlemen are talking about, right? Michael talking about honesty, and Joe, you talking about value proposition. If you're honest and you're focused on a real value proposition, aside from the capital of investing, I would think now's the time to have that conversation too. Why would anyone feel bad if I'm honest and I have a real value proposition for someone's future?
Yeah, I agree with Joe. I think you do need to stay in the game. I think I said it earlier. It's about messaging. Sure, you're staying in the same portals, you're staying in the same channels, but you've got to go ahead and you've got to modify your messaging. It's not this business as usual. You've got to be sensitive to the times. You've got to be sensitive to and empathetic to what people are going through. How do you go ahead and get your message across that you're a quality concept that should be considered? It doesn't necessarily, to Joe's point, it's not, hey, we're following our process and you're going to get this done in 6 weeks and let's march through this thing. It is, let's explore. You know what? You've got some extra time. Let's just explore. Let's take a look, and we've got some extra time. You've got some extra time. Let's take a look at what this all looks like. We can slow it down. Here's how we support the community. Here's some of the issues that we're prepared to address through our business model. But to summarize once again, do not hesitate to go after your message and modify it for the times.
Michael, I think this one probably swings more your direction. But Don says you have a franchise set to open next week in an area with little brand awareness. The startup team can't get out to train, hiring and leads are tough, fixed costs, and Z is very set on opening. What to do?
Yeah, we actually now have a backlog of about 9 shops that were to open. The good news is I think the landlords and everyone kind of get it. You're right. We can't get out there to train. We can't get out there to hire. There's a bit of a pause button here. As soon as things start lightening up, then we will get out there as quickly as possible. But I think some of those costs, like rent starting out, we haven't heard of a landlord who isn't sensitive to the times. God, I hate to answer a question with it kind of is what it is, but it's just, everything's kind of taken a pause. And I don't know that I've heard anyone yet who doesn't quite get it.
Yeah, I mean, the way they is you're going to have to develop the skill to get units open, ramped up, and be successful, and not physically be there.
Yeah, I mean, in a restaurant, we need to get out there and we need to handhold the franchisee. We've got to make sure that the staff is there. I don't know about us virtually being able to open a shop, and I'm not sure that franchisees are ready to do grand openings in kind of the separation civilization we have right now.
Yeah, the specific question was the franchisee was intent on opening. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we would talk them out of it. It's hard to have a grand opening when you can only have one person in the shop at a time.
Understand. Yeah.
Another question we got: are you working proactively on resales and prepping franchisees now that have hit the road or the end of the road financially to keep the units open long term? I think it's those crucial conversations that should be there now as an opportunity to create better performing franchise owners.
I guess I'll grab that. Yeah, we have conversations with every franchisee almost every day now. And it's pretty hard to do a resale right now. So we're really working on making sure that the business is kept as healthy as it possibly can be kept. And we do talk long term. The financial stimulus that's coming down the pipe, it will help a lot. Will allow shops to be able to push a little farther and be able to make it to the next level. Our shops are down about 30%. Once again, we're built for delivery and we're built for third-party delivery. So they aren't getting hurt as badly as some others. But yeah, it's a strain. It's a strain. And there's some folks who are going to not want to go down that rocky road all the way. It's a little premature to talk about selling, but yeah, we're prepared to go ahead and have those conversations. And frankly, we've got quite a few people who are expressed an interest in taking advantage of some distressed properties. I hate to phrase it that way with our franchisees, but if they want out, they want out.
If I could jump in, yeah, I mean, I might disagree with Michael a little bit here. Well, maybe premature not to have the conversation with franchisees. It is not too premature to create a distressed property resale program, get the banks involved, right? So when you got a resale, a lot of times it's 6 months to do a normal deal. It might take 30, 60, 90 days to find a buyer and then 120 days to do a transaction. Well, does the franchisee have 6 months, 7 months of staying power? If they don't, okay, then you better put together a fire sale program. I mean, now, which would mean get the banks involved or some second-party, third-party lenders, get expansion-ready franchisees ready to go that are faring well in this particular economy, and just get everything done, everything ready. So when these distressed properties come available, you already have a program, you got a banking package, you got maybe a chief credit officer or bank's already signed off on the deal. You've got assets on the sidelines, capital, financing, and then it's ready to go. I don't think it's too late to put those plans together. Otherwise, we're going to be closing.
One more from our audience. What changes will they do to their contracts to take in consideration acts of God situation? How do you support the franchisee network to review these contracts? What marketing support initiatives are you taking to soften the blow? What is your post strategy or lessons learned, and how can we be stronger? Lots to unpack there, but Michael, you want to take the first swing?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, real estate is making itself available to every franchisee to have a conversation about how to deal with their leases. We have, in times of crisis, marketing is the last thing, in my opinion, the last thing you want to cut. So we've actually pumped up our marketing dollars and really put forth some initiatives to drive traffic to the shops, make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to help them with top line revenues. What is your post strategy? Boy, I'm not sure that we have enough time in this to talk about that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on that one. What are the lessons learned, and how can we be stronger? What are the lessons learned? I'm going to say it again. I'm old enough where I learned a lot of lessons in the last recession, and that is treat every dollar like it's your last. Don't hesitate to play offense and make sure that you don't cut marketing, which I think Joe was iterating a little while ago. But be smart. Try not to panic. Depend on your franchisor, depend on the other franchisees to get some great feedback from them. Review case studies, read a lot, pay attention to what other people are doing. There's some really, really smart people out there that are that have case studies of solutions, whether it's playing offense or defense. And that's my advice: is use the community. There's plenty of people out there to help. IFA is a great resource, as are your suppliers, your attorney like Charles, or your accountant, or folks that they've been around the block. They can go ahead and give you some really great advice.
Joe, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, the only thing, I mean, this is a demand side problem, right? You've got, what can you learn, right? I don't know. Like, you've got people that want to do business and have money to spend with people who want to sell them product, and they can't do it. That's the problem. So what do you learn from that? I don't know, right? Other than, it always comes back to liquidity, right? So if you have the cash to survive it, whatever it is. And I think a lot of problems is businesses are not prepared for more than 1 to 2 months worth of working capital. So the time to get working lines of credit is when you don't need it.
Yeah.
Right? So I do think this is a wake-up call to just get lines of credit when you don't need it. And that line of credit should be 6 months if you can do it. And that makes the business resilient, right? Because inevitably what happens is the businesses that make it through this are the ones that are going to capture a disproportionate share of the recovery. We have a lot of our clients year over year. They were up 30, 40% this year over year. Now they're down 50 to 70. Why? Because the market, the market didn't shut them down. And that's the real crime. And there might be some political learning. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but there might be some political learnings that we have to have as a country. And you determine, who's going to decide our fate. Is it going to be the politicians, or is it going to be the entrepreneur? And right now, it's unfortunately, but the entrepreneur doesn't have a say.
It's Joe. It's almost if you're an entrepreneur and you want to become a politician, you're accused of being a criminal, and so it's de facto, you just need to come out of college and be a politician, right? I agree with that. Entrepreneurs would make a big difference running the government, right?
Charles, final questions for our panel?
No, I don't. It's interesting. We're having these conversations, and you sort of don't know where they lead, but all the dots are going to point to something. And again, going back to the beginning, which is we don't know when the restart button happens, but I agree with Joe and Michael that this is a big paradigm shift in franchising. I feel really good about seeing the value proposition and opportunity ahead for Teriyaki Madness, and having seen part of the reasons why. So that feels good. But I have to say too, Joe, you blew me away with, your focus on a paradigm shift. And people talk about value propositions, but they don't really mean it. They view it as it's just a checklist item.
The marketing.
I think franchise brands and franchising needs to really live and really understand what that value is. So, for me, you guys have just changed my whole mindset. And I was sort of a little depressed this morning. I was tired of being but no, in a good way. Everything's good and you're working 12 hours a day, but I do see that opportunity ahead. And I think there's a big shift coming.
If I could just dovetail on what you just said, Charles, look, we don't even have standard definitions in franchise. Imagine we're a $1 trillion industry, we have no agreement even on terminology. So I'm going to lob one out there. I'm going to say, and I'm going to declare, franchisors exist to add value to franchisees, period. All right. So franchisees contribute royalties, which on the average model is about 1/3 of the discretionary income. If you look at it as a percentage of EBITDA, is a franchisor worth 1/3 of the earnings? And if they're not, you got a value problem. So franchisors exist to add value to the franchisees. Franchisees exist, okay, to add value to the customer. At the end of the day, right, it's about value. And if there's any break in the value chain, the brand suffers. And then we've lived under this false distinction, okay, that the franchisor and the franchisee are separate. And they're really not, because the only vantage point that matters is the customers. The customers doesn't see a distinction between the franchisee or the franchisor. They see a brand. So we have to have a customer focus and understand, how do we work together to add maximum value to the customer coming out of this? Okay, and then everything else will take care of itself. So I'm going to go back to franchisors need to be consumed with. What keeps them up at night should be, how do I add value to my franchisees? Okay, and then the franchisees need to be consumed with the thought, how do I add value to the customer? And the franchisee and the franchisor need to be engaged in a constant dialogue. How do we work together to make that happen? And those are the brands that are going to survive.
Joe, and like those are, again, very powerful statements, right? So, and then an extension of that also becomes the supplier community, right? So for lawyers, it's not, excuse my language, how do I write stuff to cover my ass so I can tell my client, right? I mean, it's like the ridiculousness after a while of, okay, we could do X, Y, and Z, and we could plan for A, B, and C. And I get it. We have plaintiffs' lawyers who will argue ridiculous things and hurt brands even when they've done nothing wrong. But so that extends into the lawyer community too of, hey, advice shouldn't be what's maximum pressure in a ridiculous contract. And then it also becomes the broker community, right? Because I've seen brokers that take their obligation as a solemn obligation of, hey, 2 years from now, I want to get a call and hear that they've done really well with the brand. Right. And that blows me away, because there's that group of elite brokers that do that. And then there's the group of brokers that don't. They're focused on the next car they're going to have and just closing quick deals. So it applies to the whole supplier community too, in terms of a very big mindset shift, which I think people maybe say some of these, but no one really believes it, or at least the ones that aren't going to get to the next level. So, I mean, and Joe, you've modified me. You motivated me too to, like, I don't know. It's interesting. Even look, cash on cash return, conversations franchisors need to have about ROI need to happen even in development stages. That's not right. Just here's our stupid royalty structure.
Well, Charles, as a supplier to the franchisor community since 2002, I would say we exist to help good entrepreneurs find good brands and be the conduit, and help them do business together simply and easily. And it's not that. Look, it's simple. It's not easy. And if you really look at business, it's simple and not easy, right? It's just, how do you add value? Like we look at the franchisor community, we have sales guys running point on recruitment. I don't have sales guys in our team. We have executive recruiters finding talent we would say our recruitment team is talent acquisition. They're not sales guys, right? It's finding the right people for the right brand. We would say on the recruitment side that we exist to support the vision of the entrepreneur, of the CEO and leadership of the brand. If the people don't, if the franchisee doesn't have the resources, capital, transferable skills, relevant background, and shared values, they don't belong in the system. Who cares whether or not they're going to buy? And when I'm at these sessions, I'm just talking about recruitment, and we're talking about buying signals and speed to lead and all this sales talk. Who said it was a sales paradigm?
Yeah.
Right? It should be it's a talent acquisition recruitment paradigm. I'll tell you, enduring brands, they don't sell.
100% right. I have to say, in any strong brand, it's about finding cultural matches.
Yeah.
Right. They have the same work ethic. They have the same expectations. They see the world somewhat the same way. You're absolutely right. Buying signals and a sales process are what do I say, amateur hour? I mean, how do we go ahead and ensure that stronger brands start prevailing? Right? There's so much stuff out there that is learning of how to close and how to do all of these sales things versus, gosh, is this person going to succeed in this community within this culture?
Yeah, that's another. Have you ever been around an almost $1 trillion industry? There's no advocacy. And I'm not talking about advocacy. We have advocacy for the franchisor model. Who's advocating for the entrepreneur?
No,
The entrepreneur drives everything in franchising, and that's really how you get into these issues, I think.
well,
Right?
and then Joe, I mean, brands rush in. The reason why they're focused on sales, not recruitment, is because no one's ever sat down and said, what's our value proposition, right? Or focused on it. What I find interesting in the conversations Nick and I are having, like Michael and like you, when we're speaking to leadership or franchise brands, they're bringing up culture in a sincere way. And even good franchisees that we're speaking with who are worried about their teams, they're bringing up culture.
Right.
And it all goes together. And it's interesting because I guess maybe we're just speaking with the brands that are right, but culture is a critical asset, right? And I'm so glad. I mean, both of you hit me in the head too with, because sometimes you become complacent, like, okay, this is what they're doing with sales, but that shouldn't be the case. It really should be.
The brands that are doing it the right way are the ones that have this conversation on the other side of this, and ones that do it the wrong way, unfortunately, those are going to be the brands that hit the franchise graveyard. They won't survive this because they went out there and sold a whole bunch of franchises to people who weren't properly capitalized, who had no operating capital, who lived every dime that came in got spent. I mean, you put wrong franchisees into these systems, they fail in a time of they cannot wait for the rain to stop. And the brands that are responsible are the ones that end up being some of the better brands. And I think the definition of a great brand might change slightly on the other side of this too. It's not going to be, a great brand is not going to be defined by number of units you have. It's going to be on the sustainability of what you've put together. That 100-unit brand could be an amazing brand. Just because it doesn't have 500 units doesn't define it. So I think I see a lot of good coming out of this. I know it's hard to think silver lining on the other side of this. And trust me, we're getting our ass beat too. It's not like our business is all sunshine and rainbows over here. It's going to go through some challenges. But I think preparing for this moment and trying to get rid of some of the check boxes and really give value in a time of need is going to set our business up for the other side of this as well. And I'm looking at just the way that we're advising. Well, guys, I want to thank you. We went over our hour mark. Apologize for that. Wonderful discussion. I thank you both for your insights, and Charles, as always. Obviously, anybody that's watching at Facebook, go ahead and keep putting questions in there, and I'll go ahead and email it over to Michael and Joe. But we appreciate both of you tremendously, and we wish you the best of luck as we continue to navigate whatever happens in the next few months.
Thanks, guys. Stay safe.
Thank you, panel, and thank you, Nick, for putting this together. It's a huge contribution.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Carmen, thank you.